Hi, and welcome back to Garfin's Creation. Let's prepare this awesome Christmas cake. Let's decorate it too, and also put a hidden message inside. It's a step-by-step video, so you too can easily make this cake at home. We'll be making this Christmas plum cake that is used inside, and is covered with ganache and then covered with the fondant. So let's start making this Christmas cake. Let's bake the plum cake first, and for that, first we need to prepare the cake pans. So I'll just use a little oil. You can use butter too, and grease the pans well. Taking a 6-inch pan and a 4-inch pan. You can just use a 6-inch or a 7-inch pan too to just make a single cake. After greasing it with some oil or butter, I'll just put some butter paper on the downside and at the sides as well. This will help to release the cake once it is baked. After putting the butter paper, just grease it once more. In place of butter paper, you can just grease it with oil or butter and then dust it with some flour. We'll keep this aside and let's check out with the dry ingredients. Here I have taken Maida all-purpose flour. This is 1.5 cup, 185 grams. This is 1 teaspoon baking powder, 1 teaspoon spice powder and half a teaspoon of baking soda. We will sieve all the dry ingredients first. I'll put the recipe for the spice powder in the description box below. You can also use the ready-made spice powder that is available during the Christmas time for cakes. It's always better to sieve all the dry ingredients to remove any impurities. Now after sieving this, I'll be adding the spice powder into it and give it a mix. I'll also be adding 1/4 teaspoon of salt. As I'll be using unsalted butter for this recipe, I'll be adding salt now. Skip the salt if you're using salted butter. So this is done, and just keep it to the side for some time. So here I have kept to drain some mixed fruit peels. This fruit peels are soaked in rum few days ago. I do have a video how to prepare the soaked fruit peels, so do check out that video in the description box below. So here I'm taking 7 tablespoons of this drained peels. That will be approximate 100 grams. If you're looking out for a Christmas cake with eggs, I do have that recipe too, and I'll put that link too in the description box below. So this is approximate 100 grams, 7 tablespoons. To avoid the fruit peels from sinking in the cake, I'll be just adding 1 or 2 tablespoons of the dry powder mix into it. Just mix it well so that it coats the fruit peels well. So this is done, and we need to prepare all this before we could start mixing the cake. Along with this, I've also taken 1 cup of mixed nuts. Here I've taken some almonds, cashew nuts, walnuts and pistas and just chopped them finely. We'll just keep this aside and check out the wet ingredients. I've taken 200 grams, that is a small condensed milk tin. We'll be using 3 tablespoons of milk, half a cup of unsalted butter, 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence, 2 tablespoons of orange marmalade. So this is the brand that I have used. In place of marmalade, you can also use the orange skin. Just grate the orange outer skin and use it. I'll also be using 2 tablespoons of this caramel syrup. You can add this caramel syrup for color. This is optional, and I'll be putting the link for this recipe too in the description box below. So now we'll just be adding the butter first along with the vanilla essence and give it a good mix. Before you could start mixing the cake, you also need to preheat your oven at 170 degrees centigrade. You can also bake this cake over the gas stove, but that will also take more time as compared to baking in the oven. So now we will just mix all these ingredients well till it is well combined. Just mix this for about a minute. So now you can see that there's no lumps of the butter left. Next we'll be adding the 3 tablespoons of milk into it and the orange marmalade as well. I'll be mentioning the entire recipe in the description box below. So don't worry if you miss any of the ingredients now. Mentioning them in grams and as cups as well. Now mix this well till the marmalade is well dissolved into this mixture. Once this is mixed well, I'll be adding the flour in batches. Add the flour gradually and keep mixing till all the flour is dissolved in the mixture. This eggless Christmas cake gets a good texture because of the condensed milk. It adds also a good taste and gives a good crumb and slices to this cake. You may have noted that I have not added any sugar too in this recipe, and this condensed milk is going to add the sweetness to this cake. I've used a hand whisk to mix this cake. You can also use an electric whisker to mix it. But if you're using an electric whisk, just use it till you add the flour. Once the flour is added, then use a spatula to continue mixing it further. Now the maida is fully mixed into the batter. I'll be adding the caramel syrup now. First, I'll be adding just 1 tablespoon. Adding the caramel syrup is for color and it will caramelize taste. So this is optional. You can definitely skip this too. I want a little darker color, so I'll be adding 1 more tablespoon of the caramel syrup. So I've added a total of 2 tablespoons of this caramel syrup now. So we'll mix that as well. I do have made a similar cake before without using the caramel syrup. So that cake looks a little bit more whiter. This cake is going to look a little more browner in color. Now I'll stop using the whisk and use a spatula further to mix the cake. Scrape the sides and the bottom of the pan. Now I'll add the chopped nuts and the fruit peels that we had coated with the flour. Now very gently we will be mixing this into the batter. Use a spatula to fold it into it. As for the nuts, you can use any nuts of your choice. The fruit peels that I have used in this recipe are usually available during Christmas in most bakery item shops. You can soak these fruit peels any time of the year and keep it in a glass jar and keep it in the fridge and can use it whenever you want to. Now our batter is fully mixed. We can pour it into a prepared cake pans. Though I am using a 6-inch and a 4-inch cake pan, you can just put the entire batter into one cake pan itself. Since I'll be decorating this cake further, I didn't want it a very heighted cake. Besides this cake, I'll also be filling a small cake pan. We can also make small cupcakes with the remaining batter. After filling the cake pan, just level it and tap it a few times. So now this I'll be baking in a preheated oven. The oven is heated at 170 degrees centigrade with the lower heating coil on. This will take around 45 to 50 minutes, but do keep a check on it after 25 to 30 minutes. This cake took me around 45 minutes. And I always monitor my oven temperature with this oven thermometer. This is really very useful and I've been using it always for baking anything in the oven. Now once the cake is out of the oven, I'll keep it at room temperature to cool down for 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes, I'll be pouring in some rum over it. This is the same rum that is left over of the soaked peels. If you do not have much of this, you can also use fresh rum and just pour and soak the cake well with it. Pouring the rum when the cake is still warm will intensify the flavor of the cake and make the cake even more moist. So after pouring about 2 to 3 tablespoons of rum over the cake, cover it with a napkin and let the cake cool down completely at room temperature. And once the cake is completely cool, you can remove the butter paper and unmold it. To get better slices from the cake, it's always better to cut the cake the next day. Now once the cake is cooled down, I'll just remove the butter paper and just run a knife around it and then unmold it over a plate. And then I'll be cling wrapping it and then placing this cake in the fridge for at least a day. Keeping the cake in the fridge for a day, you not only get good slices but also increases the flavor of the cake. It tastes best the next day. You can keep this in the fridge for many days as well and then use it whenever you want to. So now I'll just place this cake in the fridge and then we will decorate it further. Before we could cover the cake with fondant, we will first cover it with this white chocolate ganache. The video link how to prepare this ganache is in the description box below. So just got this cake out from the fridge and we'll place it on a board. We will just mix the ganache before we could apply it to the cake. The cake is chill, but this ganache is at room temperature. I had kept this cake in the fridge for one full day and the next day we'll be applying the ganache. Spread the ganache gently all over the cake. Since the cake is chill, this ganache will start setting soon. The texture of this white chocolate ganache is really very creamy and smooth. As we'll be covering the cake with fondant later, it's best to use this white chocolate ganache. I put a dollop of the ganache on top and then spread it on top and at the sides. I'm using an offset spatula to spread the ganache around the cake. Avoid putting the same spatula back into the ganache bowl. Just gently spread the ganache all over the cake, and if you see any gaps, just add in more ganache and fill it well. Just be putting this one coat of this ganache. If you prefer, you can also add a second coat over this. Do not keep any pointed edges around the edge of the cake. Once this ganache gets hard, the fondant might tear. Now we will keep this cake back in the fridge and let the ganache set and get hard. It will take a couple of hours. In the meantime, let's prepare the fondant decorations. I'll be preparing some Christmas trees first. So just roll out green and white fondant. Not added any Tylose or CMC in this. As the weather is dry, there is no need to add that into this fondant. Now I'll just roll both the fondants once again. Then I'll be using a Christmas cookie cutter and cut out some Christmas trees from this. If you prefer, you can just use white fondant or green fondant to make the Christmas trees. I wanted to give a little green look at the bottom of the Christmas tree. So I have used the green and the white fondant too. These fondant decoration I'll be using at the side of the cake. So it's better they get dry before we could put it on the cake. Now I'm making another type of Christmas tree too. Just make a cone shape of green fondant and then slice it into two. With this we'll get two Christmas trees. This will go inside and we'll be adding a white fondant over this. It will give the effect of a snow over the Christmas tree. Place a white fondant over it and cut off the excess from the sides. I have rolled the white fondant very thin. When you cut out the branches from this Christmas tree, the green fondant inside will be seen. So I'll just press the fondant properly and just give it a nice shape. And now using scissors, I will just chop off a little bit of the fondant. This way it would look like the Christmas tree is covered with snow and just a little green part of the Christmas tree will be seen. If you prefer, you can keep the Christmas tree fully white or fully green too. I wanted this Christmas cake to look more of white and just a little bit of color here and there. You can see now how this Christmas tree looks. We'll be adding a star over it and some silver dust too. Let this dry too and make some more decorations. We'll just make some gift box. For that I just cut a yellow fondant in a rectangle shape and then roll out a red fondant and cut out a fine strip from it. That will be using as a ribbon over the gift box. I'll be just using some water and sticking the red fondant over it. We'll just cut out the excess strip from it. Make a small red bow with the remaining red strip. You can also use a fondant mold to make this bow. Then just stick this bow too on the top of the gift box. I'll be making one more similar like this in just white and red. So this is ready and we'll let this dry too. So now let's get the cake out from the fridge. The ganache is set and this took me around 4 to 5 hours to get nice and firm. We'll measure the top and the sides of the cake. This will help us to know how big we have to roll the fondant. So I'll roll the fondant approximate 11 inches in diameter. And this is the fondant I usually use for covering the cakes. This fondant is good for covering the cake and you can do it with ease. So before we could roll out the fondant, it's always best to knead the fondant and make it a bit soft. And then roll it to the desired size. Do not roll the fondant too very thick or not too very thin. If you are a beginner in fondant, just roll it a little thicker. And also keep dusting with corn flour. The fondant doesn't stick and it rolls out easily. I have taken approximately 600 grams of fondant to roll a 6 inches cake. So I finished rolling this fondant and it is about 11 inches. And the thickness of this is 1/8 of an inch. Now I'll just dust some corn flour over it and roll it over the rolling pin and then lift it up and put it over the cake. Since this cake size is small, this method of covering the cake with fondant is the best. If the weather is humid and if you're working with fondant, you need to work in a cool environment like an AC room. Now after putting the fondant over the cake, just press the top and the sides first. And then go towards the sides of the cake, just pulling the fondant outwards and with your hands, just pressing the sides of the cake. As the ganache is well set and we had removed the cake out from the fridge some time ago, there won't be much condensation. As we put the fondant over it, it will stick easily to the ganache. Now once the fondant is well stuck to the cake, we will use a fondant smoother and smooth it further. This will remove the air bubbles and remove any markings from the cake. Just smooth the fondant all over and you'll get a nice finishing with this. You'll just trim off the excess of the fondant from the sides of the cake. You can use a pizza cutter or even a knife to do this. So you see, using white ganache, the excess fondant does not get dirty too. You can use this easily for making any other cake toppers too. Now once more I will use the fondant smoothner and smooth the sides of the cake. Especially if you see any gaps, just press the fondant downwards. All the gaps will be covered. There's no need of putting any extra fondant there. Just press the fondant downwards and the gaps will get covered. You see how easy it was to cover this cake with fondant. So we'll keep this cake aside for some time and prepare some more fondant decorations. So now again I'll be rolling out some white fondant. And use some corn flour while rolling the fondant. Preparing some snowflakes. And the cutter is very intricate. You need to get nice sharp finish edges from the snowflakes. So this is the snowflake plunger cutter. So we'll dip this in corn flour too, so that we get good cutouts from it. Since there are lots of design on this, the fondant needs to be a little bit dry, or you can use more corn flour and dust it well with it and you'll get good cutouts. So in this way I'll prepare 2 sizes of these snowflakes and keep them ready. The previous fondant decorations that we had made were thicker in size. They need to get dry, so you can make those decorations a day ahead too. These decorations which are thinner, you can make it at the same time while decorating the cake. Just cut out some snowman and some Christmas trees too. So these are the cookie cutters, all from the same set. We can make more of these decorations, so you can put it all around the cake as well. And I'll be using some colorful sugar sprinkles and filling those dots in over there later. I'll be cutting out some holly leaves as well. The whole cake theme is more of white and just a little color here and there. So I'm using more of white decorations. I'll be cutting some snowflakes into 2, where I'll be using it at the sides of the cake. To make a fondant glue, I've just taken a piece of fondant and added little water into it. And now we'll just mash this up and make it like a glue. To stick the fondant decoration to the cake, you can also use water or edible glue that is available online. So you can use this glue too to stick them all. Here I have prepared this sliding message card, and I'll put the link for this video too in the description box below. As the video was getting lengthy, I made a separate video on how to make this sliding message card. So now we are going to stick this card onto the fondant. I just brushed the little edible glue that we had prepared now. This is the trending cake theme nowadays. This is a sliding secret message card cake. This was the best time to try that on this Christmas cake. This card is easy to prepare. Just follow the steps I've shown in the video. So now I just place the card over the cake and just press it a little so that it sticks to the fondant. Making this cake in this way is a nice way of revealing your secret message to someone you want to surprise. This is perfectly stuck to the cake and it does not come out. Now let's decorate this cake further. I'll be placing those half snowflakes on both the edges of the card. Just apply some water with the help of a brush. Place those snowflakes and press it little. Make sure that when you pull the center, the snowflakes do not come in the way. These snowflakes have to be really very flat and press them well. So when you're rolling the fondant for the snowflakes, roll the fondant a little more thinner as compared to the other decorations. So now I'll place all these snowflakes all around the card. This will give a nice neat look and finishing to the card and the cake. So I'm just making sure that the center is moving freely without any obstruction in between. So while making the sliding message card, I had used a plastic sheet below. So you can use the sliding message card not only on fondant but on cream cakes and buttercream cakes as well. So I'll decorate the cake further with more snowflakes on the sides and the top of the cake as well. I'll also be using the glue and sticking this Christmas trees on the front sides of the cake. And also be sticking the other fondant decorations that we had prepared. If you feel this cake has got too much work, just plan your cake ahead. You can bake your cake and chill it in the fridge the day before. You can also prepare the ganache in advance. These sides decorations too, you can prepare it a day ahead. You can also make this card any time ahead and keep it ready. And then on another day, you can just apply the ganache and the fondant and the decoration to the cakes. So now I'll be just covering the bottom edge of the cake with those snowflakes which we had cut, just to give it a complete finish. The white holly leaves, I just took a red fondant and made a pearl bead of it and stuck it with some water. I'm just adding some colorful sugar beads for the Christmas tree. I also added a sugar sprinkle star shape on top of the Christmas tree and some more snowflakes around the cake board. For little color, I'll be just adding a little larger sugar beads here and there. I can also make them of fondant using edible silver dust just to coat a little on the Christmas tree. So I just brush this with some little water in the brush, and then using another brush, I just apply a little of this edible dust over it. You can also blow some nice rainbow dust all over the cake to give it a nice shimmer effect. And with this, a beautiful Christmas cake is ready to reveal its secret message. Do watch till the end as I've cut the cake and showed how the inside of the cake looks too. Don't go away, we still have to reveal the message. I'll be putting the links for all the related videos and the recipe of the cake in the description box below. So do take a look over there too. So here it is. Wish you all a very Merry Christmas. You know, I just can't stop doing this over and over again. But I need to stop and thank you all for watching till this end. Do watch out as I cut a slice of this cake and reveal the inside of the cake too. Thanks so much for watching, and do subscribe, like and share this video with everyone. More such lovely videos coming up. Do check out my full entire playlist of my Christmas sweets too. I'll see you again. Till then, take good care and bye-bye.